Greetings, friends. Ross Ritterman back with you as we continue our Metropolis of San Francisco music ministry video series exploring the hymns of the Orthodox Church. We've recently celebrated the Nativity of the Theotokos and the synaxes of Joachim and Anna, her parents, and now we look toward the Feast of the Elevation of the Holy Cross, celebrated every year on September 14th. Earlier we looked at the Catavasias, that is, the Irmi of the canon for the Feast of the Holy Cross, which are chanted in the period leading up to that feast. There are actually 3 days during the liturgical year that specifically celebrate the cross, and these are the forthcoming Elevation, or Exaltation of the Cross, the third Sunday of Great Lent, which is called the Worship of the Holy Cross, or in Greek, Stavroproskynisios, and also August 1st, in which we commemorate the procession of the cross through Constantinople. During the celebration of the Divine Liturgy, on each of these days, we in fact replace the chanting of the Trisagion hymn with the hymn, Your Cross Do We Worship, or in Greek, Ton stavronsu proskynoumen. We sometimes call this, along with as many of you as were baptized, an Anti-Trisagion, or collectively Anti-Trisagia, where the prefix anti means in place of or instead of. So we replace the Trisagion hymn with Your Cross Do We Worship on these 3 days, or on days which are generally or always, in fact, feasts of the Lord, when baptisms were commonly held. These are days such as Pascha, Pentecost, etc., where we have Osis Christon, or as many of you as were baptized. Okay, let's first read through the words of the hymn. Your cross do we worship, O Master, and we glorify your holy resurrection. Now, this can be chanted either 3 or 5 times depending on the number of clergy celebrating. A concelebration of at least 2 priests would have us chant it 5 times, 3 by the choir and twice by the clergy, as I have it laid out here. After the final time, we chant Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, into the ages of ages. Amen, followed by a repetition of, and we glorify your holy resurrection. And this is analogous to when we chant the Trisagion hymn, and we repeat after glory, both now, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. So there's always that repetition of the final phrase. The same is true when we chant, as many of you as were baptized. So now let's consider our music provided today by the St. Anthony's Monastery Divine Music Project. And actually, before we do that, let's remind ourselves, or first let's talk about the mode of the hymn. And just like the normal Trisagion hymn, or at least the traditional mode of the Trisagion hymn, this is also in second mode. We remember that hymns in second mode are based on thee. They use the soft chromatic scale, and they have cadences on vous and thee, and sometimes on zo, and vous, thee, and zo are all structural notes of the mode. Okay, so let's begin to look in some more detail at the piece, and we have more or less a standard melody that was adapted from a composition of Petros the Peloponnesian, one of the preeminent composers of our repertoire who lived in the middle of the 18th century. Much of what we chant today is based on works he collected and codified. Petros has the reputation of having stolen a lot of things, maybe from other composers, so whether this is genuinely his originally, or he, took it, made his own changes, or maybe no changes at all, and put his name on it, well, we're not 100% sure, but nonetheless, this is attributed to him, and much of what we chant is attributed to him. So what we'll do, as I mentioned, whether we chant this 3 times or 5 times, if we were the choir, let's pretend that we are, we will chant this hymn twice, as you see it on the screen, and then when it is chanted the third time, or right before we begin Glory Both Now, the melody becomes a little more elaborate. So we have generally the same melodic shape, but additionally we see some areas that we might consider a little more fancy. For instance, we see here that we have a diatonic thora, so this actually takes us from second mode and puts us into first mode. We turn our thee into a pa, and so this would sound like, and we glorify. So that's first mode, and then we have a soft chromatic thora, and we sort of come out of it, go back into our original mode. Your holy resurrection, etc. And again, that's back into second mode. Okay. And one thing to point out is that as we kind of go through that final phrase of the third repetition, or the second repetition, really, the third time we chant it, we have this the, ni, zo, pa. So we have this really kind of exclamatory phrase here. Your holy resurrection. And we kind of climb high, and then we descend all the way down to the note vu, and then we jump up to, we go from the, ni, zo, pa, ni, zo, ke, the, ga, vu, and then, yeah, all the way back up to ni. So a jump of a sixth, up to ni, and then to zo, ke, zo, ni, zo, ke, zo, ke, the. And we end on the note the, which we expect to do in second mode. And we might even call this a bit of text painting, right? So seeing that we descend and then jump, that kind of evokes a sentiment of the resurrection. And in this particular hymn, and throughout this particular feast, in fact, we always, as Orthodox Christians, connect the cross to the resurrection. Without there cannot be a resurrection, of course, without the cross. And that's brought out here, both in terms of the text as well as in the music, and that's what this serves to bring forth at this point in the music. Following the glory both now and that repetition of "and we glorify your holy resurrection," we have what's called the Dynamis. And actually, traditionally, the Dynamis is an even more elaborate repetition of the hymn. We are given a score for it here, and it is a bit of an advanced piece to execute. In many parishes, the practice is to actually just repeat the score as we chanted it the first two times. And while that will certainly get the job done, we should probably work towards chanting the more elaborate Dynamis. That's definitely a worthy goal, and again, is in keeping with the tradition that we have in our music. So to point out several things, so it's not just elaborate and potentially more challenging because of the modulations, but also a bit rhythmically. And it kind of jumps in and out of modes. So we start in second mode, we go into hard chromatic here, we jump down a fifth from the to, actually this is the pitch level of ni, and actually the ison indicates a ni. However, this phthora tells us that we are in hard chromatic on pa, so this ni becomes a pa, and we continue to go through here. We come to our cadence. Again, it's pa, but on the level of ni. And then we have a full octave jump here, up to a high ni, but this is actually a hard chromatic phthora of the. And so this is a the on the level of ni, and so that also tells us how we need to treat our intervals as we go through it. Then when we come to "and we glorify," this line here, we have a diatonic phthora. We also see that represented in the staff notation down here. See that there. And so as you can see, there's a lot to kind of keep track of as we go through this. Again, a little bit more challenging, but with some practice and some repetition, and also listening to whether it's recordings such as this one or with other master chanters, you should be able to hopefully navigate this one eventually. And there's some really nice moments in this Dynamis, and we might also call it extremely climactic at moments. This phrase here, "You're holy." So we go from the to high pa, ni, zo, ni, as we see there, all in soft chromatic. And you'll also notice that we have these big X's, or actually these are, I would say, giant he's, or we might say chi, or he, depending on how we choose to pronounce it in Greek. And these actually serve to tell us how to treat the piece rhythmically at various moments. This is telling us to slow down. And so we're going to suspend or slow down our chronos to emphasize this particular line of the melody. Then when we get to here, this actually puts us back into our normal pace from "your holy resurrection." And right before the final syllable of resurrection, we then go back into that slower tempo to finish out the piece. So yeah, as I mentioned, a lot to keep track of. Lots of eighth notes and 16th notes, or the way they're written in the Byzantine notation, gorga and the gorga. There's our eighth and 16th notes, and several runs of notes along the way. So we'll chant through the entire piece. For now, if when you decide to chant this in church, if when you get to the Dynamis you decide to repeat the first line of music, certainly nothing wrong with that, but definitely worth working toward trying to execute the longer Dynamis that we have here. Okay, so we will chant through the entire thing. Let's jump back to the beginning of the score. I will give our epihima for second mode, which we see here, and then we will begin. Neones, your cross do we worship, O Master, and we glorify your holy resurrection. Your cross do we worship, O Master, and we glorify your holy resurrection. Your cross do we worship, O Master, and we glorify your holy resurrection. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. And we glorify your holy resurrection. Ne Dynamis, your cross do we worship, O Master, and we glorify your your holy resurrection. All right, great. So again, even if you're not quite ready to tackle that Dynamis, this will nonetheless help you with the main part of the hymn this coming Monday and the other feasts of the cross that we're going to run into throughout the liturgical year. Thank you yet again for joining us. A reminder to subscribe to our channel, throw our videos a few likes, and send us your feedback and suggestions. A blessed feast of the cross to you and yours. Until next time.